For those of you who do catch up online with this class, and if you access it through Torah Media Atlanta, you should be aware that Yisrael Killian, who runs Torah Media Atlanta, reached out because donations to that site are down. For those of you who do take advantage of it, I would suggest making a donation online when you do use it so that he can continue that site.
Okay, welcome to Parsha's Matos and Masa, double Parsha this week. Okay, quick review of the Parsha. It opens up with, Matos opens up with the annulment of vows, neders and shvua, different types of vows. It starts off by talking about a girl in her father's house. The neder, the vows, can be annulled by her father. Okay? And if she's married, they can be annulled by her husband. Alright? If nothing's said that day, then the shluchah. So, her father or her husband, whatever the case may be, whatever house she's in, can annul the vows. Of course, the feminists don't like this, but that's too bad. Okay. Then we move on from there and we talk about the Battle of Midian. We're going to get vengeance on Midian. Remember, they tripped us up with idol worshiping and illicit relationships, right? And Moshe Rabbeinu is told that his death is contingent on this battle. Right after this battle, he's going to die. So that's keep in tuned. We'll figure out how Moshe reacted to that. Okay? They go to war, and we learn out certain things from this battle. We'll talk about that. Certain things that we always do when we buy dishes and vessels, we learn out from this Parsha. Okay? And then after this, we have 2.5 tribes of Israel, that is Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh, are interested in settling on the other side of the Jordan, the land that was conquered from the two giants, Sihon and Og. They do not want to go into the land of Israel proper, okay, because they have much cattle. The first cowboys. That's right. And so, so they want to settle in this land that has a lot of grazing territory, kind of elbow room, you know what I mean? Huh? And we'll have to discuss that because obviously we're talking about very great tzaddikim, not cowboys. And therefore, what's going on? They didn't want to live in Israel. They want to live outside of Israel. We'll have to figure out what that was all about. Then we go into the next Parsha, Masa, and it talks about the 42 different encampments that we have in the desert. Right? Okay? Just a list of names, and we'll see that there's some deep mysticism, esoteric wisdom in this Parsha, as well as all the Parshas, but we'll see that these 42 encampments represent quite a few things, okay? And also, which is discussed in the Parsha, is the Ir Miklat, the concept of a city of refuge. Okay? City of refuge. There's 6 specific cities of refuge, and then there's 42 Levitical cities that can also be used as a city of refuge, a total of 48. Okay? And there's other stuff, but I think that's a brief overview, if you will. Okay, now we're going to go back and try to hit some of the highlights. We're going to see several examples in our Parshas of what seem like such simple, innocent, quote-unquote simple, nothing simple in the Torah, but they look like they're simple, innocent verses, right, laden with tremendous meaning. For example, you want to know, right? Tell us. Give us an example. Okay. Chapter 30, verse 2, which is the very first verse of our Parsha. Right? It seems like an innocent enough verse. And Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes of Israel, saying, Zeh hadavar asher tziva Hashem. This is the thing that God commanded. Right? That's a great example. Here's a verse that we read every year without realizing in it is contained one of the basic 13 principles of faith. In that verse is one of the 13 principles of faith. You got it? It's all in the word zeh, which means this. Listen to Rashi. There are prophets, every prophet as a matter of fact, except for Moshe, prophesizes with Hanivim Nisnavu Beko Amar Hashem. They would prophesy with Ko Amar Hashem. Hashem said thusly, like this. Ko means like. Like this. In other words, this isn't exactly, but it's kind of like this. In other words, Hashem appeared to these prophets, right? He appeared to them in a dream or a vision, a riddle, a metaphor, something, right? As you'll see throughout, if you look at the prophecies of, like, let's say, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, right? Okay, so there are like visions, and they had certain symbolisms, right? So the prophet would give it over to the people. Ko Amar Hashem. This is kind of like what God said. Rashi continues, Moisif Aleya Moshe. Moshe had an added madrega. Nisnave Beloshin Zeh Hadavar. Moshe, when he prophesied, he had a much clearer prophecy. He prophesied with the words Zeh Hadavar. This is the thing that Hashem spoke. Zeh, if you remember back in Shmos, is like referring to something that you can point to. Zeh. This. Right? Like the Song of the Sea. Zeh Keli Ve'anvehu. Right? This is my God. They actually pointed, we didn't know what that meant. We were discussing that, right? But that was the prophecy of Moshe. This is one of the 13 principles of faith, right? That the prophecy of Moshe, maybe I got my tongue suntanned and burned when I was there, that the prophecy of Moshe was on a level like no other prophet. He's the father of all prophets. Right, like it said in Baal Loishka, this was the lesson that Hashem gave to Miriam. When I speak to Moshe, it's not like I speak to any other prophets, right? The Kol Beisi Ne'emanu. He's the most faithful in my house. Peh el peh adaber bo. I speak to him mouth to mouth, remember? And not in riddles. Lo b'chidos, right? So there it is. From this verse, we have that one of the 13 principles of faith, that Moshe is Av HaNavim. He's the father of all prophets. Okay? Okay, now let's move on. If we look at chapter 31, verse 2, Hashem speaks to Moses. We're going to be looking at two verses here, verses 2 and 3 in chapter 31. Hashem tells Moshe, Nakom Nikmas B'nai Yisrael. Take vengeance for Israel. Right? The battle of Midian. As we explain, right? They plotted, Bilam helped them plot that we have illicit relationships with them in conjunction with idol worshiping, on the Baal Peor incident, right? And so take vengeance on them. Now it's time to go to war with Midian, right? Take vengeance for B'nai Yisrael, for the children of Israel. Moshe repeats this, and he says in verse 3, okay, get ready for war, but he changes it at the end of the verse, Nikmas Hashem. Let's take vengeance for God. Okay? So several things we learn here. Number one, that we see that Hashem said take vengeance for Israel, Moshe said take vengeance for God. Rashi tells us, and I quote, it teaches us, Sha'oimed keneged Yisrael, Te'ila oimed keneged HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A person who stands against the children of Israel, who wants to battle us, is really battling God. Is really battling God. Now I want you to know, this is like a source, if you will, for anti-Semitism. If you see anti-Semitism, if you see an Inquisition, if you see Nazis, or anybody else that's trying to kill the Jew, know deep subconsciously he's really trying to battle God. He can't battle God. He can't do anything to God. So, God's ambassadors on earth, the people that we're supposed to represent morality, right, and the belief in one God, and all the other things in conjunction with God's divinity, right? Right? That's us, the Jewish people, his ambassadors on earth, represent spirituality, representing that you have to answer to somebody, that you're held accountable, that you just can't give license, to everything, right? They don't want to be told that. They want to do whatever they want to do. So they're mad at God. right? And they don't want to accept that, so they battle the anti-Semitism, right, is really battling God. The Nazi, the Inquisition, try to force Jews to convert. All this is merely a hatred for God. So that's why the statement, whoever stands against Israel is really standing against God. You know, when we buy dishes, right, from non-Jews, we take them to the mikveh. And we tevel them, So everybody where's the source for that? Rabbis making up things again? Chas v'sholom. It's from our Torah portion. Chapter 31, verse 23. This battle of Midian, when these vessels that were taken for war, right, there was two things that were done. First of all, there's a process called Hagala. If you remember, during Pesach time, right, if you have a vessel that's trace, or let's say you want to use it for Pesach, you used all your non-Pesach things, chametz, right? So you have to purify it in the same way that it was used. Kederach tashmisho hig also. Yeah, in other words, if it was like a frying pan, it has to be put on that same heat. Whatever, right? So if you notice, like that Jacob here has a big boiling pot. So people want to take those vessels and kosher them for Pesach. It's put in there in that extreme heat, right? That's called Hagala, right? So that's what you would do to make a non-kosher vessel. I'm saying a vessel made of steel or something. Certain vessels cannot be koshered, like what's made of clay or something like that. It won't withstand the heat. It'll just, okay? Right, so that's one process they did here. They took these vessels and they put it through this heat process in the same manner that it was normally used, this vessel. And then it is put into a mikveh. And then it's put into a mikveh. That's the word v'taher. To be purified, it has to be put into this mikveh. It's going from the hands of a goy to the hands of a Jew. Okay? So in order for that to happen, it has to be purified. Obviously, we're talking about some very, deep spirituality ideas here, right? How the mikveh works in itself is a very big mystery. Okay? But basically, the 40 measurement amounts of a mikveh represent a lot of things. A fetus is formed in 40 days. It represents a new birth, reborn type of thing. That's why a convert goes into the mikveh, right? They get a new neshama. They start all over again, right? A lady starts all over again. The vessels have a new creation, so to speak. You're supposed to consider yourself like recreated. It's a very deep, deep thing. Okay, let's move on. In this verse, I missed one thing. We're going to go back to verse 3 again. I missed one thing. It's very important to know. These people that went to war, even though it says take vengeance for God, take vengeance for Israel, we're not talking about simple people. When, in the secular terms, who you go to war, the biggest, strongest guys you got, right? Sharpshooters, whatever it is, right? Not by Israel. Chapter 31, verse 3, when it says, Anoshim Litzava, pick men, right? Get men for the army, Rashi tells us a one-word commentary. Tzadikim. They had to be righteous. They had to be perfectly righteous. They're not necessarily very skilled in war. That doesn't determine Israel's victory. Right? That's a very important thing. I don't know why things are happening in Israel. I'm not going to pretend to know. But I know that we can learn at least one lesson, right, from peace treaties and all these other things with people that only understand one language of violence. And that is, if you put your trust in America or America's money or in your army, then you leave God no choice than to show you that it's not your army, it's not America, it's not political or economic sanctions that wins wars, it's your faith, your trust in God. And the bigger a tzaddik you are, and the more Torah and mitzvahs and merit you have, that's what's going to determine your dwelling in peace in the land of Israel. The answer to your question is that all of Israel is responsible for each other. That's right. And though you're right, there is tzaddikim, and there was tzaddikim during the Holocaust, and there was tzaddikim during the destruction of the temple, but there's others who are all interrelated to each other, number one. Number two is you have to realize also that we have a verse in Yigdal. You know, if you look at Yigdal, it's a very interesting prayer. The 13 principles of faith are in it. So, when we see isolated events, we have very big questions on them, right? I'm not pretending to be callous, and I hurt also. But we do only see what's before our eyes. Listen to the end of Yigdal. This is the 13 principles of faith is in Yigdal, so it's very interesting. That classic question of why do the ways of the wicked prosper and why do bad things happen to good people is right in here. It says, Sofev v'yodea s'sarenu, God knows our hidden thoughts, hidden things are going on. Mebit l'soif dava b'kadmaso. God sees the final results at the very beginning. He sees the final results that's going to happen from all this. Right? For example, in 1948, when all, the leading rabbis were against having the state of Israel that was run by a secular government because maybe they foresaw things like this happening. The bottom line is the government of Israel is not run by Torah. It's run by a secular government. Okay? So God sees the final result. And maybe the lesson is for us to get, when God afflicts us, we'll have a whole class on this on Tisha B'Av, by the way. When God afflicts us, it's for us to do some soul searching. Yes, we're afflicted more than any other nation. Other nations might not be hit like this because God expects more of us. We're His ambassadors on earth. Listen to the rest of it. God will see the Mabit l'seif dava b'kadmaso. He sees the final results at the very beginning. And what's going to happen finally? Very next thing you go, Gomer li'ish chesed kimifalo. He will give the righteous what they deserve. No sen l'rasha ra kirishaso. He'll give the wicked according to the wickedness. Next verse. Yishlach l'ketze yomi mashiachenu. When will this happen? At the end of days when Mashiach will come. Then we'll understand the final results from everything that we only saw the immediacy of, the severity of it. We'll see the final results from everything. Right now, we can't understand. I can't give you an answer for these things. But I know this much. I know God is true. I know God is just. I know God loves us more than we love ourselves. And He's running the world. And we have sinned. And we have to, our job is to introspect. How can we get stronger and closer to Hashem? It's not a matter, we are that bad and we're not that bad. Compared to all the nations of the world, we're not that bad. You're 100% correct. But according to the standard that God wants us to live up to, He holds us by a very fine line. The same way, if you look, with Tisha B'Av coming up, guys, if you look at Yirmiyah, this prophet Jeremiah, his life was a complete misery. Hashem assured him, I'm going to be with you. Don't worry. What happened? He ended up being whipped. He was thrown in a dungeon. He was scorned. He was the most unpopular prophet we ever had because he prophesied what was going to happen, the destruction of the temple. So how do you justify these things? Okay, that was his mission. He was on a very high level. Yaakov has sourced throughout his whole life. Okay, the higher you are, the greater you are, the more Hashem is going to hold you accountable for slight sins. Israel as a nation, we're called His children. We're His immediate Bani Hashem Lashem Lokechem. And therefore we're held in very strict account. And we're not living like we're supposed to. Yes, the things you mentioned are true. The self-sacrifice and the laying still in talis, 100%. But there's other problems in Israel. There's a lot of secularism. There's problems in Tel Aviv. There's a lot of things. What's going on the beaches and morality and stuff. And we are all interlocked with each other. I'm not saying that's the only answer. There's many other configurations going on. I'll be glad afterwards. I have to go on now. I'll be glad to talk afterwards about this. Okay. It is very upsetting. Okay. We're going to see something else. Again, it's going to address both what you were saying and what you were saying towards the end of the Parsha. I hope we can get to it. Okay. Chapter 32, verse 22. Still finally find himself a tag team partner. Okay. One of the answers to your question is basically we need fresh reminders. We forget we're in exile. we forget Tisha B'Av. We cry over the source. But we don't cry over our sins that caused the source. That's our biggest problem. We should cry that we're not serving God properly. That's the mistake we're making. We're crying over that He's punishing us, that He's punishing us. So that's one, and God has to give us fresh reminders every Tisha B'Av. There has to be an inquisition. That wasn't enough. First temple, second temple story, Inquisition, Holocaust. Every year we need fresh reminders because we're not correcting the basic mistake. Okay, we'll talk about this more in detail on the Tisha B'Av class. Okay, chapter 32, verse 22. Vayisem nikim me'Hashem u'miyisrael. An interesting verse. You shall be clean. You shall be clean or beyond reproach, so to speak. Make sure you're doing the right thing, not only in the eyes of God, but to your fellow Jew. Right? This is a big question. Like, if God knows, let's say I go to McDonald's, right? And you come by and you see me come out of I had to go to McDonald's because I was in the middle of the desert there, whatever. I had to use the facilities. Right? Right? How do you know it? You come and, wow, what's going on here? It's McDonald's, So do I have to explain myself to you? God knows I didn't eat there. God, the Torah tells yes. It's not enough that God knows. It's not enough God knows. You have to, beyond the shadow of a doubt, I'll give an example. Back before, these are called man-made shoes. No leather to them. The ones that I'm wearing right now, right? So, back before they were popular, I had a pair. Let's go back 15 years ago. Okay? And on Yom Kippur, Rob told me I was going to wear them. Right? Because they look dressy. They look nice. And on Yom Kippur, he told me not to wear them. Can't wear leather on Yom Kippur, right? Right? These are perfectly legal. There's no leather on them. However, here's your verse. Right? People will think you're wearing leather. They won't know. Okay? So it can vary. Now, in today's day and age, it's such a popular thing for shoes to look like leather, but they're not. It might be different. Okay? But this is very similar to the idea of Maris Ayin. Maris Ayin, what it will look like. For example, there's halacha. First of all, we're not allowed to cook meat and milk together, right? So there evidently, in states in halacha, evidently there's some sort of thing that you can cook with almond milk. Almond milk is used, I guess it enhances the flavor of the dish, right? You're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to cook meat, that is. You're not allowed to cook meat with almond milk unless you have the almonds right there next to it. So why? Because people will think this verse, or Maris Ayin. They'll think that you're cooking meat and milk together. Unless you see the almonds there, then it's self-explanatory. You understand? That's a very big lesson. So we have to, you guys can probably think of better examples. Like in business, this could come up a lot, right? You have to make sure that people, even though you didn't swindle somebody, right? That he may think, wow, he just saw you sell the same product, or what looked like the same product to somebody else for $100 cheaper, right? So you may have to, go up to him and explain, right? Even though you're honest, because he's going to think, right? So this is an interesting halacha, and it's a very important one in our interrelationships with each other. Okay. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about in a few minutes towards the end of the class here, we're going to talk about why this parsha is always read during the time of Golus. Okay. I'll just go into it right now. Actually, the next part is always read during time of Golus because it deals with traveling. Okay, we'll get into it. But there's a lot of connection that this part has been during 3 weeks. One of the main reasons that we're in this exile is because causeless hatred, a lack of unity. So this verse of showing beyond a shadow of a doubt not to be suspect in your fellow Jews' eyes is a little bit of rectification for that, right? That you care so much about your fellow Jew, you want them to only think good of you, right? Not to suspect you. Okay. Let's move on. Now, I have a question for you guys. Number one, on this battle of Midian, I'm quoting from Mordecai Miller of Shabbos Shurim. He says the following. This battle of Midian, Moshe Rabbeinu is told he's going to die. Right? So, right after the battle. So, Moshe Rabbeinu, we see does an act that shows his love for mitzvahs, dearer than life itself. Dearer than life itself. Even though he knows that his death is tolui, is contingent on this war of Midian, he doesn't, as soon as he gets the commandment, if you notice, as soon as he gets the commandment 31:2, right? Hashem tells them, look, go battle Midian, and afterwards you'll be gathered to your people, which means, it'll be time for you to die, right? And what does Moshe say? The very next verse, Vayidar Moshe al-Am, immediately, okay, let's go to war, basically, right? Okay, by the way, that's one of the reasons Moshe says, take vengeance for God. Because had he repeated God's words, take vengeance for Israel, Israel has said, we don't want vengeance. Because your death is going to be after this war. Forget it. We'll do away with our vengeance. We'll forgive. And that way you can stay alive. So Moshe said it's the vengeance of God. You can't move out through this. Okay? So at any rate, what happens? With this is my question to you guys, with this tremendous love for doing the mitzvah, the last mitzvah of his life maybe, right? Yet, what does Moshe do? He doesn't do the mitzvah. He gives it over to Pinchas. Right? He gives over to Pinchas in chapter 6 and Eleazar, and they're going to be in charge of the war. You hear? It sounds like a contradiction. You hear the question? Dearer than life himself is his mitzvah. He doesn't hesitate immediately to do it, but then he doesn't do it. He gives it over to someone else to do. Okay, your answer is legitimate. That Moshe appointing someone else to do the task is considered as if he did it, right? But you still need a reason why. Why didn't Moshe see fit that he should do it and that he appointed someone else to do it? Okay, one very clear answer is Pinchas started this. So it's only right that he finished the mitzvah, right? There's also something about Pinchas has a personal thing against Midian because they sold his great-great-great Zaidi, Yosef. Rashi brings that down. However, I want to show you a sensitivity. With all this taking vengeance and violence and taking the booty and the spoils and everything, there's a line, there's a balance, there's a boundary. Moshe Rabbeinu does not do the first 3 plagues in Egypt. You remember why? Not right that I strike the Nile River with blood and frogs, because the Nile River saved me as a baby. The Nile River is inanimate, has no feelings. Says the Gemara, don't throw a stone into a well that you once drank from. It desensitizes you. Something that you got benefit from, it's not right. You should show the gratitude to such extent to even inanimate objects, and that will translate in your relationships, and that will translate between your relationship to God, of being grateful. Moshe was brought up in Midian, right? He spent probably 40 years there. That was my home, in a certain sense, right? It's not right. It's a lack of sensitivity for me to battle them. Therefore, even though, I want you to hear this, even though this mitzvah is dearer than life to me, right? I'm willing to do it immediately, even though my life is going to end after this mitzvah. Immediately I'll do it, but the sensitivity of derech eretz, of good character traits, of manners, says, I can't do the mitzvah. The mitzvah is dearer than life. So I'm going to give it over to you, Pinchas, because it's not right. It's not derech eretz. It's not manners that I fight them. An amazing the subtleties and sensitivities of the spiritual nature here. Okay, to answer Phil's question, okay, it's a beautiful example. Phil asked, Avraham, we learned a lesson, Hashem promised Avraham, by the way, that I'll make you wealthy. And Avraham had such faith in God, I don't want it to come from flesh and blood. God will make you wealthy, I don't want a shoelace from you. However, I will take for the people in the battle. Myself, I'm from. I have no right to impose my level of frumkeit on somebody else. That's a big lesson. That's a big lesson. That's the distinction. You want to be from, you want to put in yourself stringencies, very nice. But the normal process of war, you take the spoils. You're entitled to that, right? And you have no right to your righteousness, you can't impose it on other people. Okay? There's many other answers to it as well. Okay. I have another question for you. Let's look at the account. Now we're going to move on to the 2.5 tribes. The 2.5 tribes want to settle on the other side of the Jordan River, right? Chapter 32, verse 16 and 17. Okay? First of all, at the very beginning of that chapter, it says that they had a lot of cattle, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. So they asked Moshe, we want to settle on this side of the Jordan River. And Moshe Rabbeinu gives them a tongue lashing for about 15 verses here. You guys, don't you remember what happened to the spies, with the spies incident? You're going to just settle here you're not going to participate in the battle of Israel, of conquering it and everything? You're just going to let your brethren fight? You're going to sink all the hearts of Israel. Didn't you learn everything in the spy? And they sit there and they listen. And the bottom result is, no, Moshe Rabbeinu, of course. Not only that, we'll do like you said, we're going to lead. We always had that in mind. And not only did they do that, they even did more than Moshe asked. We'll lead them, they said, into battle, into Israel to conquer, and we'll make sure that they're settled, each tribe in their own land, in the land of Israel, and only then will return to the other side of the Jordan and settle in our land. The whole time they had it in mind. So the question is, why didn't they interrupt Moshe? Why didn't they interrupt Moshe Rabbeinu and say, Moshe, no, why you suspect us? No, we never had that in mind. They sat there and took the Musar. And to answer this question, I'm going to tell you a story of the great Sfas Emes. Sfas Emes was one of the Rebbes of the Hasidic dynasty called Ger. Okay? His grandfather was the Rebbe, the Hasidic Rebbe before him, the Chedush Yarim. The Sfas Emes, even as a boy, he was a prodigy, he was a child prodigy, he was a genius. And one night, he was sitting there learning. He was learning all night, and I don't know, I guess 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever, he went to sleep. So his Zadie comes in, his bedroom, it's about 6:30 in the morning, and he sees him sleeping. That's late in the day, 6:30 in the morning. And he starts giving him a tongue lashing. So, hey, you're sitting there sleeping, what's going on? Why you're bottling, you're not learning, you're sitting there, what are you doing sleeping? And the Sfas Emes, for a solid hour, it says, he sat there listening to his Zadie give him Musar and explain to him, I guess, the importance of time, the importance of Torah, and how you utilize all things and get a real Musar schmooze, ethics, how to live. And his friend finally asked him, after his Zadie, Chiddushim left, his friend asked him, he says, why didn't you tell your grandfather what happened? Why didn't you tell me you were learning all night and you just went to bed an hour and a half ago? So the Sfas Emes says, I could have done that, and he would have stopped, but I would have missed out on getting Musar from my holy Zadie. His every words are so precious, you can learn so much from it. So that's the same thing with the 2.5 tribes. They were having Moshe Rabbeinu talk to them, right? Yeah, okay, Moshe suspects us, he's wrong, but who cares? Let's just hear the Musar. We can learn and grow so much from this. Back then they used to like to hear rebuke. We don't like to hear rebuke. But rebuke from Moshe Rabbeinu. We can make us live better on a higher level. So they listened until Moshe was finished. Oh, then they tell him, by the way, we had in mind this all the time. It's an interesting sensitivity. Now, I want to ask you another question about these 2.5 tribes. Our original question was, we're talking about tzaddikim, great people. We're not talking about people that are interested, in their 400-acre ranch, right? In South Fork or something. There's a cattleman here, right? What's going on here? Doesn't make sense that they wanted to live outside of Israel. It said, Avir Eretz Yisrael Machachim, that the air of the land of Israel makes one wise. The air, that's for an average person. How much more so for people of spiritual stature like these 2.5 tribes, how much they could have gotten from the hashpah, from the influence of the land of Israel. How much of spirituality and sensitivity, every mitzvah you do in Israel sensitizes you, makes you more spiritual, right? And they're willing to give that up to live on the other side of the Jordan because of steak? Does that make sense to you? Right? So, Chedush Yarim explains in the name of his Rebbe, Rav Simcha Bunim. First of all, we have to go back to the Parsha of Pinchas. In Pinchas, we have a Rashi. Chapter 27, verse 12. Moshe is told by Hashem, chapter 27, verse 12, go up to the Mount Har Ha'ivrim and look up at the land of Israel. And afterwards I'm going to gather you into your people. You're going to see the land of Israel. And Moshe at that time asked about the next leader of Israel. Listen to Rashi. When Hashem said, go come up to the mountain, look at the land of Israel, they were right now in the land of Sichon and Og that they had conquered. The land that Reuben, Gad, the 2.5 tribes wanted to settle in. Right? Listen to this Rashi. Kivan shenichnas Moshe nelachlas b'nei Gad b'nei Reuben. At this time, when Moshe entered the inheritance that's going to be allotted to the 2.5 tribes, samach, he got happy. And he said, it seems to me that Hashem has revoked his decree. He said, I couldn't land around Israel, but behold, I'm in the land that 2.5 tribes are going to occupy. Evidently, I'm going to stay in the land of Israel. As a matter of fact, he was buried there. As a matter of fact, that's why Reuben, God, and the half tribe of Manasseh wanted to be in that land. They had a tremendous acquisition, a tremendous cleaving to their Rav, to Moshe Rabbeinu. Where do I see that? Says Rav Simcha Bonham right there in the verse. Chapter 32, verse 1 says, Umikne Rav, which means, Mikne means cattle, Rav means much, that they had. Atsu Ma'od is a problem, very much. It seems redundant. Not according to Rav Simcha Bonham, because you can read Mikna as cattle, but you can also read it as to make a kinyan on something, to make an acquisition on something. Rav, their Rav. They had a strong acquisition on their Rav, their Rebbe, Moshe. A tremendous cleaving to him. Atzum Me'od. Very much. Therefore, they wanted this land because Moshe Rabbeinu was going to be buried there. You hear? We're willing to give up the land of Israel to live there and the spirituality just so we could be next to Moshe Rabbeinu even in his death. It gets better. It gets much better. Listen to this self-sacrifice. You know what? If we take this land of Sichon and Og outside the land of Israel on the other side of the Jordan, you know what? Tiskades gam eretz Sichon v'Og v'kedushas eretz Yisrael. This land, in retrospect, will be the land of Israel because we're 2.5 tribes of Israel, right? We're going to dwell there. That means we conquered it. It is Israel. What does that mean? Oh, it means that the decree is going to be automatically annulled, that Moshe cannot enter Israel. Because behold, we are in the land of Israel. We're going to take this land. We're going to give up the land of Israel, its spirituality, the land of Israel proper, and make this like the land of Israel. We'll sacrifice spirituality. We'll be thought low of by our brethren, by all the other tribes, who will think we don't want to lead them in war. We'll do that, right? We're willing to give all that up just to keep our Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu, alive as the leader of Israel. Because now, right, he's here in this land. Right? He's in the land of Israel, which means the decree is annulled. That was some of their thought process on this. So it's a tremendous self-sacrifice. They were willing to give up the Kedushas of Eretz Israel and the elevation spiritually they could have gotten all of this, and to be thought bad of by their brethren, and to even be rebuked by Moshe Rabbeinu who suspected them. It's all worth it for that Mikneh Rav, for that strong acquisition we have on our Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu, to keep him alive. A decree or a prophecy for bad, you know the rule, doesn't have to come true. It can be annulled. In other words, every time that we get a prophecy from one of the prophets, like Jonah's the classic case, with the town, I'm going to overthrow Nineveh, I'm going to destroy Nineveh. They were never destroyed. It's a prophecy for good always has to come true. But a prophecy for bad means more or less, if you do not get extra merits, this is what's going to happen. But God gives over that prophecy for the ability for you to get better, to uproot it. That's the free will, or else there's no sense giving over the prophecy. The free will is gone. So they understood that rule. But with all this, you should know, with all this, they were the first to go in exile. With all this, these 2.5 tribes did not have the sanctity of the land of Israel, so when the exile came, they were the first to be exiled. Okay, let's continue. Moshe Rabbeinu also corrects them on another arena. and that is, just slight nuances teach us so much. Chapter 32, okay, let's look at it again. Verse 17, they say the following, 2.5 tribes say the following, we will go, right, armed before the children of Israel, because we have compassion on our brethren. Moshe Rabbeinu corrects them. 20, verse 20. No, if you do this, and what is that? If you'll go armed before Hashem in battle. What's the difference between having compassion on the children of Israel, your brethren, and leading them battle because of that reason? Moshe says, no, that's not the reason. You go because God said it. Right? Why? Because Moshe is telling them a fundamental lesson. If your first concern and reason is to march in war to do the will of God, right, rather than to have compassion on your brethren, right, then you can be sure you're doing the right thing. Because human definitions of what is compassion and what is merciful are nebulous and they're changeable according to the culture and time. And they're often proved wrong by history. The only guide for Rahmanis, for mercy and compassion and success, is to do the will of God. Therefore, there can be a commandment to wipe chapter 33, verse 55 and 56, to wipe out the Canaanite nations. Go out there and wipe them out. And what does the verse say? Im lo terishu et yeshvei ha'aretz. If you don't conquer the people standing on the line, evil people, wicked people, it's a mitzvah. If you love God, you do the act of violence and you destroy evil in the world. Because that's not violence. That's truly merciful. You're saving lives. You're saving innocent lives. You kill terrorists, bombers, Nazis, you're saving millions of lives. You're not destroying, you're building. Listen to the verses, 55 and 56. This is part of your answer. Im lo terishu es yeshvei ha'aretz, if you don't conquer the inhabitants of the land, mitneichem. And the ones I share you, so mehem, the ones that you leave will be like thorns in your eyes and in your sides. And they will give you trouble and affliction in the land that you dwell in. And what I was going to do to them, I'm going to do to you instead. Only in the perspective of God's wisdom can this passage be understood. No dictator has a right to decree that the entire population be exterminated or exiled. But Hashem revealed that the Canaanite presence would not be conducive for Israel's mission on earth. And history is the most conclusive proof that obviously God was right. For the fact was that the Jews of the time, the liberals, could not bring themselves to eliminate the Canaanites. Shaul did not destroy Amalek, for example, and as the result was that years later we were drawn into immorality, we were drawn into idolatry, and finally they afflicted us, they oppressed us, and finally we were exiled, and the destruction of the temple. Because we thought we would be more merciful than God and not destroy him out. Very careful. Liberals, in the name of liberalism, people that are being defended today could be chas v'sholom your oppressors tomorrow. We can't take that out of context either. But it's very nebulous what's considered violent, what's considered merciful. There's only one true guide, the Torah. Let's finish up and then I'll take questions. The next Parsha, let's go into the next Parsha since we're running out of time, talks about 42 different encampments. I want to tell you something. You just read off the names and you think like, what's going on there? Why does the Torah bother to tell me every one of these encampments? First of all, listen to this. First of all, Seidas Gedolos. There's tremendous deep secrets in these 42 encampments. And we're told, it's quoted in the name of Surah Mar, that these 42 encampments are a hint to God's 42 names. God has a 42-letter name, and if you're reading them, these encampments, you shouldn't stop in between. You should read all of them at the same time, because you're reading God's name. Unbelievable. This is brought down in Mishnah Berurah in Halacha. It's unbelievable. By the way, the 25th encampment is Chashmoina, a hint to the Chashmonaim of Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is two words, Chanukah, to rest on the 25th, to camp on the 25th. The 25th encampment, Chanukah, Kaf-Hey, right? The final letters of Hanukkah is 25. The 25th encampment, which is how you can read Hanukkah, was Chashmoina, the Chashmonaim, a reference to Hanukkah in the Torah. Okay? It says that every person in Israel does 42 travelings in their lives. I don't know what that means, but then I saw the Chiddushei Rim comment on that. And he says, each one of these encampments, there was certain tests. For example, he says the place where they had a desire. And, in this case for the quail, right? It says everybody in their life goes through tests of desires or goes through tests of whatever it is, the golden calf, something equivalent like these 42 tests that they went through in the desert. I don't know what that means. And it says Israel as a whole will go through these 42 encampments again. We'll get back all the 3 miracles in the desert, and we'll go through these encampments again during the times of the Mashiach. And it's hinted to in the verse. It says in chapter 33, verse 2, the Eila Masayim Lemotziam. These are their travelings, Lemotziam, that they'll go out of. In other words, we'll do it again. Okay, that's Barbara Nell hints to that. Also, you should know, if you're wondering why we were encamped in this place a certain amount of time, in this place a longer time, again, in those words, these are encampments of the going out. What going out? Says the Or Chaim HaKodesh, there's certain godly sparks in every one of these encampments. I don't understand what this means. And because of that, one place they had to spend 12 hours. Another place they had to spend a year. Why? Because they were doing spiritual things in each one of those encampments. They were gathering godly sparks. Pure Kabbalah. Pure mysticism. And that's what's interesting. These are the travelings of their going out, of taking out the holy sparks. Okay, we don't understand what these mean, but it's important to know that there's deep, deep hidden layers and secrets of the Torah, beyond what we see in the surface meaning. This just gives us a sense of humility. Okay, now guys, we're coming to the end here. I want to share something very interesting with you. That is the following. We had a question back in Shmos when Moshe was at the burning bush. Who loves Israel more than Moshe Rabbeinu? Who's the one that's always asking, defending, the defense attorney, after the golden calf, after the sin of the spies, remember your people Israel, don't kill them, don't destroy them. And yet, when they're in exile in Egypt and they're suffering and they're slavery, and Hashem comes to Moshe and says, no, it's time to redeem your children, my children. Moshe says, I don't want to go. Send my brother. I'm heavy of tongue, I can't speak good, And for 7 days he's arguing. 7 days he's arguing with Hashem. It doesn't make sense. You would think Moshe Rabbeinu, from everything we've learned about him, right? Hashem says, no, it's time to liberate the children of Israel. We say, great, let's go. So if you remember, what did we say back then? Moshe uses the word Anoichi. Should I go? I'm not Anoichi. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I'm the Lord your God. You're Anoichi. I want you to go. When Moshe was asking, I want to know if this is going to be an eternal redemption with never another exile. In other words, you go, God. If you go, that will be it. That will be the final days, the times of the Mashiach. Right? The ultimate redemption. Is that what it's going to be? Or if I go, I don't want to go because I know I'm a Basar V'Dam. I'm flesh and blood. And by definition, that means it will be a temporary redemption. There's going to be other exiles. Which one? Hashem says, you got to go. The ultimate redemption is not ready yet. I have to take them out early. They're going to have to fulfill this exile with the 4 big exiles that we've been in. Moshe, I don't want to go. What's the sense? What's the sense of taking them out of this exile so there'll be another suffering throughout the history of Israel? And Moshe saw everything. He saw the Holocaust. He saw the Spanish Inquisition. I don't want to go. That's what Moshe argued about. Hashem says, that's what you got to do. That's what it has to be. That's what it has to be. It's hinted to in this verse. The first verse of the second Parsha. Chapter 33, verse 1. Look at it. Eila Maseh B'nai Israel. These are the travelings of the children of Israel. Asher Yatsu Meretz Mitzrayim, that they came out of Egypt, right, in the hands of Moshe and Aaron. These 42 encampments also represent different exiles we're going to be in different lands. The first 4 words, Elam Maseh B'nai Yisrael, is an acronym for the 4 exiles that we've been in. Elah, the Aleph, is for Edom. That's the one we're in now. The Mem for Masai is Need. The Beis for B'nai Yisrael, for B'nai, is Bavel, Babylonia. And the Yud for Yisrael is Yavan, Greece. Elam Maseh B'nai Yisrael, these are the travelings, the exiles of the children of Israel. Edom, Med, Babylonia, and Greece. Why? Because you came out of Egypt. You have to fulfill that exile in the hands of Moshe and Aaron, flesh and blood redeemers. Therefore, it has to be these future 4 exiles. You hear? What's the name of Nahal Kadmonim says all this. Okay? Alright, I'm going to finish up here with talking about the cities of refuge. But I do want to mention that this generation, the generation of knowledge, was on the highest caliber, and every one of these encampments had a test. And Hashem wanted this to be rooted in their soul. The spiritual DNA for this nation, the root of Israel, this generation who got the Torah, to go through these tests so their spiritual genes would be that much stronger. So Hashem subjected this people, the Doradeh, this generation of the desert, with these tests of these 42 encampments, so every one of us, their descendants, can pass similar tests in future generations. Very deep stuff. It's not a simple thing that just affects these people, it affects all Jewry. Okay. The whole idea, I got one more thing here, this is cute, you'll like this. Maybe not, okay. Sin, Midbar Sin, it says, and actually we call it Sinai, right? Why we have the Yud for 10 for the 10 Commandments, right? How many times was Moshe Rabbeinu up at Mount Sinai? 3 times, 40 days, 40 nights, 120 days. That's the numerical value of sin. Sin is Samach, Yud is 10, and Nun is 50, that's 120. Just a hint of that. Okay. The purpose of the Ir Miklat, what would happen is the following. A person accidentally killed somebody. So really he deserves death. But, he doesn't because he didn't do it on purpose. It was an accident. But the bottom line is you took someone's life. So he goes to exile into a city of refuge. That's equivalent to death. By the way, that's the state we're in. We really, because of our sins, have a death penalty on us. But God has mercy on us. We're considered like unintentional sinners. Why? Because the persecution of the nations, the bombardment, the culture and everything, we get confused. So Hashem mitigates the sentence and puts us in exile instead of the death penalty. And that person stays in this Ir Miklat, in this city of refuge, until the Kohen Gadol dies. Because, how does that work? How does that work? Well, Hashem knows this guy may be negligent to a certain degree. 3 years worth. Some guy else, he should have been more careful, so he deserves to be there 17 years, whatever it is. Only Hashem knows when the Kohen Gadol is going to die. But at any rate, that is the purpose of exile. It's to mitigate the death penalty. You should know that this Parsha is always read during this 3 weeks, right before the 9 days, because that's the state we're in, Masai, traveling, in exile, right, with a death penalty on us, mitigated. That's the situation we're in right now. And therefore, this 3 weeks, which commemorates the beginning, the siege of the temple, and the destruction, and our ultimate exile that we're in now, is always read then. In conjunction with this, Aaron dies. Aaron, who's the pursuer of peace, the Kohen Gadol, died on Rosh Chodesh Av, which is coming up Tuesday, the start of the 9 days. We are in exile, and it's Aaron's attribute, who died at the beginning of the 9 days, that will get us out of exile. Aaron pursued peace, who tried to make unity in Israel, and our exile is because of hatred of disunity amongst each other, right? That's the lesson of this Parsha. We're in exile, mitigated death penalty, but we can come out of it if we take the attribute of Aaron and try to have a unity with each one of us. Okay, that's between man and man. Between man and God, we got to do something as well. I don't preach this often. I don't know if I've done this many times to ever tell you guys that you should take on something, but I'm going to say it this time. We don't have a city of refuge today, physical, but we have a spiritual city of refuge. It's no coincidence that the 6 cities of refuge is parallel to the 6 words, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, the national anthem of Israel. Listen, Israel, the Lord your God, God is one. And the 42 Levitical cities, which also were used as a city of refuge, yeah, you got it. They correspond to the first paragraph of the Shema. V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, right, with all your might. To the very end of that paragraph, 42 words. What's the connection? That's your city of refuge. You got pursuers trying to kill you, right? You got, in other words, a Yetzer Hara that's trying to take you out of this world. You got afflictions. You got questions about what's going on in the world that you don't understand, right? There's only one place to take refuge. God, Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the God, the attribute of mercy. Elokeinu. Sometimes he looks like the attribute of justice, strictness. Why are things happening that seem so cruel? Hashem Echad. It's one God. It's all Hashem Echad. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. It's all mercy. At the end we're going to see it was all merciful. That's your only city of refuge. A person should take on every day. Take 1 minute out of your life in the morning before you do anything, and 1 minute at night before you go to bed. Say the first paragraph of the Shema. Lock in to your spiritual city of refuge. Your beacon of trust and faith to escape all the evil winds of the world. Shem, you're one. I love you. My ultimate loyal devotion and faith is in you. Even though I don't understand what's going on, I know that you're one and you're taking care of everything. I don't know if I'll ever ask you guys to take on something again, but I'm telling you should do this if you're not. Shema Yisrael, the first paragraph. Take a minute. Say it in English. Say at least the first line, the first 6 words. Right? Embed in yourself. Masrish. Put it in the bones. Your faith in God. When you do things, actions have to exceed the wisdom. You got to do things to make it real, to implant it in the heart. Good Shabbos.
Thank you for listening to Torah Media Atlanta. Won't you consider making a donation to help support this important work? Just go to TorahMediaAtlanta.com and click on the donate link. Thank you very much.